Okay, good morning. Okay, so I just started our recording. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Database Committee meeting on September 22nd. It feels like it's been a long time since we did this, so I'm glad that everybody was able to join us both in person and online. Why don't we start by doing introductions? Oh, good, and it looks like a lot of you can hear online. Keep chiming in if you can hear. The first thing I'll tell you, though, before we get started with introductions, Jennifer Jacobson Wood, our database chair, is unable to join us today. She is actually traveling in Denmark. Her daughter is studying abroad, and so I told her if she visits any libraries, try and get some pictures. We'd love to see them. So that's where Jennifer is today. So why don't we start in the back of the room? I think we'll actually start with Wendy, and we'll work our way up. Go ahead and just say your name and your library.
Wendy RSA. James Campbell, RSA. Kendall Larson, RSA. We'll get to that.
And then we'll jump to you, Rebecca.
Rebecca, Normal Library.
Okay.
Karen McClure, Normal Library.
Brady Calhoun, RSA.
Linda Bierman, RSA.
Nancy Turvey, Galesburg Public. Lori Power, Washington.
Liza Hickey, RSA.
And Jen Benson, Grants.
Cassandra Stokes, Peoria Public.
Becky Bertie, Peoria Public. Tracy Carroll,
Joanne Allen, Erin Martins, Woodland, Prairie District Public.
Amanda Gray, RSA.
Erica Laughlin, RSA. I'll go ahead and read those that are online. So we have Beth Duttlinger from the Lilliam Evans Library in Princeville. Debbie Gehrig from the Dunlap Public Library. Genevieve Kratz from Chillicothe Library. Hopefully I pronounced your name correctly. Jeannie Moonen from the Normal Library. Jennifer Schote from Peoria Public Library. Julia Kozad Callahan from the Normal Library. Lindsay Nichols from the Carthage Library. Oh, good. Thank you, Genevieve. Let's see. Melissa DeVerger from Blessing Riemann Health Professions Library. Monica Paget from the Fond du Lac District Library. Rebecca Seaborn from the Farmington Area Public Library. And then Uzma Salat from the Normal Public Library. Thank you. We've got a great turnout today. So hopefully everybody in the room has a copy of the agenda, but I'm going to go ahead and go to that on our committee page. That way those online can see it and it can help guide our meeting. So remember the agenda as well as all the meeting resources that we'll talk about today. They're posted in this blue menu on the left side of the RSA website. One thing I wanted to mention too, we have a new shortcut link for our RSA website. So rsanfp.com is our new shortcut link. So once you're there, we'll go to the RSA board, committees, groups on the left. And then we'll go to the DB Management Committee. And notice towards the top there's an agenda section. So if we click agendas, okay. Before we take a look at the meeting schedule for the coming months in this fiscal year, Elizabeth, do you want to introduce yourself since you snuck in?
I'm Elizabeth from Henry Public Library.
Thank you. Okay, so I thought what we would do first is get our meetings figured out that are coming up. So I made these slips, and I think, Miranda, do you want to help me hand these out? They're little slips that you can take back with you that have both the full meetings, these 2.5-hour meetings, both in person and online, and then also the in-between meetings that, remember, we do in March and November that are just about an hour or so. So for those online, let me show you where it's posted. And there should be plenty of those little slips, so if you want to take one or two back for a colleague who maybe wasn't able to join us. So I'm going back to our committees page, and I'll show you where those slips are posted under the meeting resources at the bottom. Okay, so anytime you're attending here in person, remember to register on L2. If you're joining us online, remember to register now through Go to Training because L2 doesn't track the virtual registrations and you won't get the link to join us. So if you're attending in particular virtually for these or those in-between meetings that we only do virtually, make sure you register on Go to Training versus on L2. So our next full meeting will be Thursday, January 19th, 2017. Same time, same place. We actually had to move that meeting as well as the May meeting on May 18th. We moved it back a week because Liza and I joined a Rails cataloging working group, and that group meets the second Friday of each month. And we thought that that might be a little bit of a bad idea to try and do a meeting and then go to Burr Ridge the next day for that catalogers group. So that's why we're meeting a week later than we typically would. The in-between meetings, remember those are online only, just about an hour or so. Our next one for those will be Thursday, November 17th, and then we'll do one in March to hold us over between the January and the May full meetings, so that'll be March 29th. All of these are posted and Go to Training. All of them are posted on L2. So if you check your calendar and know that you're able to join us, go ahead and register. And then if it doesn't work out, you can always cancel closer to the workshop. Do you have any questions about those meeting dates? Okay. The last thing I'll mention before I hand it off to Kendall and Doug, we do need to think about, and I know we don't do this consistently, but Martha and I decided it'll be easiest for us to keep track of electing new officers if we try and do it in January. I can't even remember the last time we tried to appoint new people as committee chair and secretary. Not that I don't want to get rid of anybody. You're both welcome to run again. But we were trying to remember when we even last talked about this. So I think what we'll try and do from now on is just have these elections in January so that we know at the start of the new year we're recruiting new leadership for the committee. So I thought I'd tell you just a little bit about the chair and the secretary, and if I forget anything, Erin, chime in. And then you can think it over, and closer to the meeting in January, you can let me know if you're interested in either chair or secretary. But mostly I just wanted to get the wheels turning in your head right now that we'll be looking at these officers in January. Okay, so let's start with the chair. So the chair can either head the committee or there can be a co-chair too. So you can tag team it if you want. It's typically a one-year term, but like I mentioned, we haven't been very good about keeping track of when people have been elected. But there's no term limit maximum, so you could keep running for the position. You attend these full meetings in person, help guide the meeting, and then for those in-between meetings that we talked about that are just online, we actually have a staff broadcast here. It is helpful if the committee chair can come to the staff broadcast. That way they can help guide the agenda again and participate. So even though most of you would attend those in-betweens online, the committee chair, it would be helpful if they could come here. And then contribute suggestions for the agenda, keeps the meetings running smoothly. It's really a painless position, so I'd encourage you to think about it, and if you're interested, just send me an email and we'll put you on our running list of people interested. The secretary, also a one-year term, but again, there's no term limit maximum. You would attend these full meetings in person. Take minutes for them. The bonus is, though, is you don't have to take the minutes for the in-between meetings. So it's just for these full meetings we do the minutes. So you get a break with those meetings in November and March. We ask that the minutes be shared with me at least 1 month after the meeting. That way we can make sure they look good and then they're posted on the RSA website before the next users group. because that's one thing I forgot to mention about the chair. The chair will give a brief report at the users group meetings about what was discussed in the meeting here. So the committee chair would then use the secretary's minutes to make that report. So that's why it's important to have the minutes done within a month of this meeting. And then the minutes are posted on the database committee page. They're shared on the listserv, and then, like I said, they're discussed during the users group. Does anyone have any questions? Did I leave anything out, Erin, about the secretary? Okay. So just like I said, if you're thinking about one of the positions or both, just send me your name and I'll add you to my list. Okay. I'm going to let Kendall and Doug come up next for their part.
So, as many of you know, I guess it was a year ago, maybe even longer than a year, when Suzanne left us, and shortly after that, then Wendy moved from being the reports coordinator to the, I'm going to mess this up, membership services coordinator?
Sure.
I think that's what your title is. And so there's been this kind of weird hole in who's doing reports, and I kind of do them and Wendy kind of does them, but it doesn't work out great because we're not really sure who's in charge, and so I just tell Wendy to do it. But then Martha has things for Wendy to do, and so anyway, we've had this open position that we converted to make it match the other consortia inside of Rails to be more of an IT type position. And as part of that, they're also in charge of reports. So the first thing we're teaching Doug here is all of our reporting products, of which we have many. So we're starting him off with the new one, Blue Cloud Analytics, and getting him in on that, learning all the data structures, and then we'll kind of expand it out to Symphony reports and Web Reporter and Director Station and all the other myriad ways of getting reports. And then, once his brain is completely befuddled by all that reporting stuff, then we will start throwing everything else at him. So it will probably be a long, multi-year project. It takes 2 to 3 years typically to train someone on the admin piece of the Symphony system. It's, you can tell somebody this is how it works, but until it breaks, you don't really understand why it works that way. And usually when it breaks, you're, running around like chickens with their heads cut off trying to get it fixed. But those are really the best time to learn things. So Doug will be with us for a long time, learning how to do all this stuff, and you will be talking with him more and more and more. Right now, his business cards are not here, but he will have those soon. If you wanted to contact him, you can get him by going to the RSA staff support info page, and way down at the bottom is the systems department, and there's Doug's email address. It follows the same pattern as everybody else's email address, and you'll notice there's no phone number there, and that's because we want you to call the 800 number. So just call the help desk and say, I want to talk to Doug. Now, say some words to introduce yourself and what you know of the library world and how you got to us.
So I'm Doug. I've been working in libraries on and off since I was at Page 16, and I was mostly at Peoria Public Library for a little over 5.5 years, 5 months, something like that.
Thank you, by the way.
And I don't do well with large groups. I'm a grad student at Dominican's MLAS program. I'm also heavily invested in technology and database systems, just as a geek, as well as what I've done in undergrad. So I'm looking forward to learning BCA and the other reporting software. I'm looking forward to helping you all with it, and maybe we can break some things together and then figure out how they work, right?
That's what we do best. breaking the system in new and innovative ways. Well, thank you, Doug. Appreciate it. He'll be around. His office is the second office in the door on the left, because no, it'd be on the right, my left. Right when you come in. One of these sides. All right. Well, thank you. Well, that brings us to the who to contact list, which we have just revised a couple days ago. So again, on the
Sorry, I'm already slacking.
That's all right. So again, on the RSA website, we've got the RSA support staff info. There's a downloadable copy, which you're getting handed out, and then there's the online copy. This has all been revised. We put Doug's name in here a lot, and you may contact him with your thoughts, and then he'll come and contact one of us to find out what it is you just asked of him. But that's a good way to learn things, so feel free to do that. All right, Wendy, you're up.
Back up here. Morning, everyone. Just briefly wanted to let everybody know, as we've mentioned before, I'm now in the Membership Services Coordinator position, which is a position that will make most of the site visits to come out and see you guys, let you know everything that's going on RSA and Rails-wise, answer your questions. I've been in contact with a few of you to try to get some meetings set up, and anybody I haven't contacted, I will be in the coming months, trying to gear up more now that Doug has filled the other position and I can start transitioning away from the reports. So hopefully get to come out and visit everybody very soon. Do you have any questions on site visits or anything? No? Okay. Thank you.
James, you're up. I'll let you drive.
Hope we'll get there fast then.
No rest.
As long as
Right.
as long as there are no police around.
Yes. Okay, I just wanted to let everybody be aware that the documentation has been updated. We actually, show of hands real quick, how many have Windows 10 at their libraries now? We actually now have documentation on how to back up and how to replace the CRC folder. So Doug will hand out real quick how to back it up, because of course that's the first thing you want to do is back it up, because you can't replace it unless it's backed up. So let me actually, we don't have a Windows 10 computer. Do you like Windows 10?
At home, I hate it, and at work, luckily they haven't gotten to it.
You must have went from Windows 7 to 10, because if you had Windows 8, you would love it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I have I had 8 to 10 at home. And I
Oh.
don't like it either.
Oh, but I
And
hate
at work, I
it.
have 7. And I have mine, some people have lost theirs. I keep running away when the guy comes.
I'm with your computer with you.
Yeah. So on Windows 10, if you are familiar with Windows 10, it is completely different than Windows 7, of course. There is a thing that's called Cortana. It's down on the bottom in there. If you actually just typed in CRC there and hit enter, it takes you right to what you need to back up, which is very, very nice. Really, really easy. And again, it shows you exactly what you need to do, how right-click the folder, hit copy. Then you plug in your RSA flash drive, which, is it okay to, does anybody here not have an RSA flash drive?
Not.
Okay, let's just say if you do not have an RSA flash drive, please get one of our staff. We will get you one today before you leave. So whoever needs one, just contact Wendy or myself, anybody, Martha, anybody here will get you a flash drive. It's a regular flash drive, but the thing is, it says RSA on it and other little things, and it tells you what it's used for. That way, if you're like me, you might have 5 to 6 flash drives in your drawer, and then when you call me and you say, hey, my CRC folder is, something's wrong with, and I say, do you have a backup? And you'd be surprised how many times they're plugging in different flash drives looking for it. Because nobody knows, because once you back it up, you put it away and you're not using it again. So this way you know for sure what flash drive it is. So again, if you need one, let one of us know.
I'm not sure what I just saw. I'll go back to that real quick. I just saw Beth typing something.
Yeah. It's a Windows 10 question.
Uh-huh.
In Windows 10, you cannot link to the catalog records for recommended titles. Is there a timeline for this issue to be resolved with Library Thing?
With library thing. Have her send me an email.
Yeah, I'm not sure on.
What that is. I haven't heard that one before. Or if I have, I forgot.
So if you've done backups before, once you actually find the folder in Windows 10, which we show you the pictures exactly how to get to it, it's the same kind of thing. So you're right clicking, hitting copy, plug in your flash drive in, and then hitting paste, and now you have a backup of it. Whoops. Now how to replace it, Doug also has some paperwork for you. This mouse, I am not liking this mouse. It's sort of everything in reverse steps. So what you're going to do, you're going to plug in your RSA flash drive again. It's going to pop up. You're going to hit the open. You're going to right click and hit copy. Then again, that's where you go back into hit Cortana, type in Cersei. You're going to hit enter. That's where the workflows is going to be. And this little box will pop up about when it's time to paste it. It says, do you want to replace? Well, of course, because that's the thing. We're trying to replace it with the new backup. There's a little thing down here that this number here might be different because each computer might have a few more files in it or something like that. So, but anyway, you do this for all events and you hit yes. The best way, if you open up your workflows, I just had a phone call this morning and they're like, hey, what's the IP address? That instantly tells me it's not reading the correct Cersei folder. So if it doesn't have the IP address in there, saying the rsa.aos, rsa.org, all your settings are gone. If it doesn't have an IP address in there, all your settings are gone. When you do a user search, it's going to search for all libraries instead of your library, as an example. So again, I asked that library, do you have a backup of it? Sure enough, they did. They plugged it in, copied it over, opened up workflows. The IP address was already in there, which means all their settings are back. So any questions at all about Windows 10 and backing it up and replacing it? If you do, give us a call. I can remote into your computer, anything like that. So was there anything online? No? Okay, good.
And if, like me, you can never find anything on our website, the easiest way to find it is to change to an asset search in this first drop-down. And in this case, just type Windows 10. And this will return you back to all of the things that have Windows somewhere in the document. And the ones at the top all say Windows 10 specifically. So I tend to do asset searches a lot when looking for documents that we've uploaded. All right.
Excuse me.
Yes, go ahead.
If we have Windows 7, could we find it Windows 7?
Yes. Yeah. The Windows 7 documentation is still out there. If you still have Windows XP, you shouldn't. Please get rid of it. Microsoft does not support it at all whatsoever, even kind of, sorta. Windows 7 is going down that same road. It's going to be end of life in 2 years, I think it is. Maybe 2 years. So you got a couple of years before you need to upgrade off of Windows 7. There's still security information and security updates coming out for those. All right. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Blue Cloud Analytics. We are to the point now where we're comfortable enough with the product that we're starting to run training classes. We've been, right now we're doing them all in here, so we're limited to a class size of 8. That's probably about right, because once you get over 8, there's too many people clicking and doing different things, and it gets very confusing. The other thing is we're still refining the documentation and the presentation of how to do the training. So every time we do a class, then I go back and I look at the documentation and make some corrections and changes. So just to give you an idea, if you go out on L2, we've got a class next Tuesday for basic online libraries. This is what, September, October, we've got full online, I think the 12th, and then a basic online class like the 27th or something like that. Full online libraries have different user privileges than basic online libraries, so we can't mix training. It's very difficult to do mixed training on this project or this product for users that have different levels of access, because I would say, okay, well now you can do this, but it's specific to how you're logged in. So we're not mixing the training on that. Right now we're doing one class a month just to kind of get into it. Probably by November, Doug will be taking over, November or December, Doug will be taking over that training, and we'll probably go with, you know, like a class a week type of thing until the demand starts to wear off. For folks who want to come here, then we'll look at, all right, who would like to host a training class where we can come and take our laptops and train 5 or 6 or 7 people out in the, you know, Carthage area or in the Quincy area or, you know, in Fairbury or whatever. And then once we get through the biggest chunks of people we can hit and get the most people trained we can get, then we'll be able to look at, all right, who needs that individual visit that just cannot leave their library but really is very interested in being able to run their own reports. And then we would be getting to that. That'll take a little while. We need to get more people trained first. If you want numbers, if you want reports, there's a couple ways to do it. Maybe the best way is to use the report request form, which is right here below the cataloging request form. That'll open up a form. You fill out a bunch of information that lets us know who you are, what library you're in, and what time and day we should contact you. And then you can tell us, hey, I need this report run, or I need you to give me this data. So you can use that, or you can simply call or email, and we'll figure out the best product to get it to you in, and then set the report up and get you the data. So just because you haven't had training doesn't mean you can't get reports out of any of these products. All right, so just a little sneak peek for those of you that have not seen it yet. This is analytics. Everybody who gets training gets their own personal login and password, which you shall never ever share with anyone, because this is on the internet. It is unlike all of our other products where if you go home you can't actually access it. This you can hit from anywhere. On pretty much anything that has the internet, you can get to this. So, you know, when I go on vacation and I'm in the middle of nowhere, as long as I've got internet, I can run reports, because clearly that's what I want to do when I'm on vacation. All right. So as we're going through, we're basically taking all of the reports that were in Web Reporter and recreating them as closely as we can. There were lots and lots and lots of reports in Web Reporter, and there are thousands of reports people have scheduled in Web Reporter, and eventually we hope to get all of those moved over so we can turn off Web Reporter. This product is still being developed on the back end by Circe Dynex, so there's more data that will be coming. Basically we've got folders based on the types of reports we think are the most useful to you. So we've got bills paid, bills unpaid, current charge activity counts, because everybody wants counts, how many of this happened, and then current charge activity lists, because as soon as you give somebody a count, they go, well, that doesn't sound right, can you give me a list? So you'll notice there are lots of count and then list folders. In Web Reporter, those things were all kind of combined, and you end up with 50 reports in a folder, and it's hard to find things, so we started breaking things out. We've got historical circulation for IPLAR, so when the IPLAR comes out for next year, we're going to try and look at those questions and recreate them and get you the closest data answers we can get for the IPLARs, and we'll drop those in there. Historical cert counts, hold lists for the same reason. Why are there 4 things on hold? I don't know. Let's look at a list. Transit counts, transit lists. So if you're wondering what happened to, for instance, all of your items that are checked out at other libraries that are also overdue, there's a list for that. If you just want to see all the status of all of your items in any library other than yours, you can get a list of those. If you want to see the status of all items checked out in your library that don't belong to your library, there's a report in here that'll give you a list of that. Any report that's in here you can schedule and have it come to you via email. Some reports are great to have come to you via email. Other ones maybe not so useful. All depends on the report. There are a lot of people in Web Reporter who are running these transit reports for all of my items that are lost or overdue in other libraries, and I get that, you know, every week or once a month, just to kind of keep a tab on, here are my things that are not normal, that are outside of my library. And it goes on and on. Item counts, item lists. Mark record stuff. This is new. We can pull particular items based on stuff that's in the MARC data. So we could run, you know, if you give me a Flex ID, I can pull a full MARC record in here, which is neat, but I really don't care about that. What I really care about is here are MARC records that have been, they're low-level cataloged and they need to be upgraded, or they fit certain criteria. There's a certain thing in a certain field, or there's not a certain thing in a certain field, or it's a VM record, which is supposed to be a video and or music, or just video. Just video. But there are books cataloged on those records. So lots of things like that we can go through and pull now and make great big long lists of cataloging errors to keep Erica's staff very, very busy. As time goes on, we'll be recreating the current end of month reports that you guys get. And so we've got end of month last month, end of quarter, end of year reports. We'll be building those as we go. And also things that we think are useful to everybody, we're already posting. So there's a monthly statistics page here on our RSA website. So right now we've got checkouts and renewals by station library broken out by item category 3 and 2, because what do the IPLAR want to know? How many books did you check out to juveniles? Well, this report will tell you how many books you checked out to juveniles. So basically, it's very small. Let's see if we can make that bigger, because I've got bifocals and I still can't see it. There we go, that's a little better. So at the Alwood High School here, they've got books. They've got 33 checkouts that were item cat 2 adult. They've got 65 that were juvenile, and 160 undefined. That's probably something we may want to look at eventually. But basically, we're running these as one report for everybody in RSA. So this is not necessarily something you want to print out, but it is something you can download, grab your stats really quick, and then go, oh, by the way, I'm the same size as this library. Let's see how I'm doing compared to them. The other nice thing is, as we go, I'm keeping year-over-year reports on the website. That's one thing that a lot of people have asked for. Well, do you have my report from a year ago, from July? And basically we have to open up your Gmail account and pray to God that you did not delete it, because the system doesn't keep those stats. So I'm keeping month over month and previous 12 months for all these reports on the website. When we get to the end of 2016, there'll just be another line below it that says 2017. So as we move forward, this will also be an archive of report data. So if you're ever wondering what your stats have been doing over time, or you need to answer a question, it'll be out there. So we're recreating all of those in analytics as well. So essentially, analytics is going to end up with lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of reports in lots and lots and lots of areas. But the nice thing is that it's combining everything that Web Reporter could do and pretty much everything Director Station could do into one product. So we don't have to go, you want what? Okay, now how can I run that? All right, I have to be in this one. This one won't send you an email, so now I've got to do it manually every time you ask, versus the other one, which I could just set it up to be scheduled. So, like I said, lots of training upcoming. And the other thing you'll notice in here, when you get trained and you start using it. There's a project for RSA and there's a project for Quincy. You don't need to be in the Quincy project. It's dead data to you, but it's very much live data for Quincy. So as you know, Quincy is migrating into RSA and they go live in February of 2017. They will be effectively tied for our third largest library. They're slightly bigger in some ways and slightly smaller in other ways than Galesburg and Pekin. So we'll have Galesburg, Pekin, and Quincy all essentially the third largest library in RSA, depending on how you define that. As part of that, we had Circe Dynex set up a new project that looks at a development server that we have set up where all of Quincy's data out of their current system was dumped so that we could go, what does their data look like in our system and how does that need to be tweaked so that when it's put in there in February next year, it's as close to being correct as it can be so that it works correctly in our system. And that is a lot of work. Quincy uses the same software as us. They do not catalog the same way we do. So there's going to be lots and lots of work to do to get everything back to normal. As soon as we are done with the Quincy migration, there will be a full system dedupe. This was something that was kind of on the back burner that we have been wanting to do. And essentially what that's going to do, we'll do it on the test server first, so that it won't affect any of you guys. But then after Quincy, their data migrates in, we're going to have to dedupe the system so that their version of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone gets added to our version of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. That'll make sure that the holds on their copies go onto the holds on our copies. And more importantly for your patrons, because those records came in last, they're going to appear kind of higher up in the search results. So, you know, patrons are lazy. They go, that's the one I want. They don't look and see how many copies are attached to that record. They just grab the top one and they put a hold on it. Well, there may only be one of those in the whole system, where if they'd have looked 3 records down, there was one that had 250 copies on it that they'd get in 2 days. So the dedupe will go through not only looking at Quincy's data, but looking at all of the records in the database and merging those titles together that need to be merged. And there's all kinds of things that we have to set up to make sure that it does it the way we want it, and that's again why we test. And then going forward, we'll be doing that on a yearly basis. All right, so I think the go live date for Quincy is the 16th or the 17th of February. I don't remember exactly. It's a Thursday, I do remember that. 17th, and then a week later I leave the country.
That's when the dedupe happens.
That's when the dedupe happens. I didn't plan that, by the way. That's just how it worked out. All right. Any questions on any of that from online or in the room? I didn't put you to sleep? Good. And the clock was not ticking at me either.
That's just for break.
I could have talked however long I wanted. No clock.
So we'll tell you next about that Rails cataloging working group that just started meeting. I'll have Lisa tell you her thoughts about it and who's on it, and then I'll chime in with a few things myself.
Well, I didn't write down any thoughts, but I have the people that are in it.
Okay, let me navigate to the, there's a website too, so let me go back here. Maybe.
And I apologize ahead of time because I will butcher these names. I don't intend to, but I'm terrible at pronunciations. So there's Lisa Bogus from the Joliet Public Library, Carrie Halter, who is the chair from Batavia? Batavia Public Library. There's me and Erica from Rails. Kimberly Last is from Prospect Heights Public Library District. Elizabeth Marzalik from Oak Park Public Library. Barbara Mayer from Northbrook Public Library. Ann Slaughter, who is also of Rails, and Colleen White from Oak Park Public Library. So Erica and I are pretty much representing this.
We are, and I felt like it was especially important for us to have a voice on this committee because you can tell it's all suburban libraries. And I'm not saying they don't have great ideas. They do have great ideas, but we very much need an active voice on this group. So
They're all big libraries.
and
too.
they're all big too, which makes us a little bit nervous because again, we want to make sure that this group is really supporting all sizes of libraries and Rails. And the goal of this group, it's an outgrowth of something called the Consortia Committee. That is a committee that the Rails board put together. And then there was a Consortial Futures Subcommittee, which then organized this working group. So there's lots of levels how this group was even formed. But mostly the Rails board sees opportunities for collaboration and cataloging. And so that's why they saw it as really a crucial need to put this group together that has people in the cataloging profession. So we've been charged, and notice here the charge is posted on the site for the cataloging working group. We're mostly just supposed to come up with best practices for cataloging, competencies, a lot of those issues that we've talked about within RSA. They'd like to take those type of issues to that next level. Training is another big piece of this. Training is something that I know, especially here, I know everybody is always eager to get cataloging training. Knowledge is power in cataloging. It truly is. And so we spent a lot of our first meeting on September 9th talking about training, how that might work. There's definitely consensus that there needs to be some kind of basic cataloging boot camp offered on a recurring basis that would be system agnostic. So it wouldn't necessarily be, you know, this is how you do things in RSA. The RSA training will very much stay in place for cataloging, but this would be additional training to get you firmly grounded in the basics of cataloging and MARC records and principles of organization. So there's no hard and fast plan yet for that, but this group really does want to try and support cataloging throughout Rails more fully and then come up with, like I said, this idea of best practices and also competencies. I did talk yesterday because a couple of our administrators from the Rails Burr Ridge office were here, and I talked for a little bit with Jane Plass, who's our assistant executive director, and she was saying that these might even possibly be part of the membership standards for Rails. If this group comes up with some kind of training component for catalogers, that might be able to be worked in to the membership standards for even belonging to Rails. So I think the work of this group has a lot of purpose to it, but I also think though, and this is why I'm so glad Liza and I are able to be on this, we need to make sure it's not a one-size-fits-all approach to what's planned, because we want to make sure again that we're representing the whole system and not just a certain type or a certain size or a certain budget of library. So we don't really have anything concrete to report yet, but I am interested in any feedback that you might have, and you don't even have to share it now if you don't want to, but mostly just to get you thinking if there's things that you think that Rails could do to more fully support cataloging. So thinking, again, wider than just the scope of RSA. Things like foreign language cataloging, the training's a big one. We also talked about a mentor program where an experienced cataloger from really anywhere across the state could help mentor and guide maybe a new cataloger. So there's a lot of potential here. The thing is that we have to have recommendations by next year at this time. So this committee will be a very condensed tour of duty. It won't stretch on and on. So I'm hoping as we keep meeting every other month, there'll be more that we can share with you as we get further along. But like I said, I'm really interested in your ideas if you think that there's additional support for cataloging that maybe this group hasn't even thought of. Do you have any questions about the group? Okay. I think so, for now at least. Okay, this actually ties back to one thing I just mentioned. So notice on our agenda, I wanted to mention those revised membership standards. Did anybody see in the e-news that came from Rails? These were just posted, I think last week in their e-newsletter. I put the link to the membership standards on the bottom of our committee page, but of course you can get to it from the Rails site as well. So notice I put the link there. These membership standards have been a work in progress, so I want to encourage you, and especially too with your directors and your other colleagues, to read these. And then notice too there's a place at the bottom where you can make comments. If you have any thoughts about these, good or bad. I know Veranda Pitchford, the member services, I always butcher her title. Her title's not on here, but the kind of the member services type of specialist, and then also Dee Brennan, our executive director. I know they very much want comments on these standards, so share them widely and be sure, like I said, to either comment on it or email Veranda or Dee directly. But mostly the more feedback they can get on these, the better. That way, as they keep revising these, we can make sure that they're responsive, a lot like we were talking about with the cataloging group, responsive to all sizes and types of libraries within Rails. Let's see, going along with that, there is a member update coming up. You might have seen this announced too in that e-newsletter through Rails. The next member update is September 29th. You can listen to it streaming, so if you're unable to leave the library, you can listen through your computer. We always host a group viewing here, and then there's networking afterwards. And then they record it too, and they put it on the Rails YouTube channel, so if you're unable to join in person, you can take a listen later. Those revised membership standards will be a big part of that member update. I know they also plan to talk about how some of the other consortia in Rails, Swan, Magic, and Link, are going to be merging into Swan. I know they'll talk too about upcoming opportunities at the Illinois Library Association conference that Rails is hosting or having presenters participate in. So there'll be lots of good information in that member update. And if you're able to join us, I know we'd love to see you here or listen at your library too, if that's easier. Do you have any questions about those two things? Okay, back to Kendall. The one that you're not really sure what
That's
you're
right.
doing.
So I am here to talk to you about OCLC's America's Regional Council, of which I am a member of, although I haven't actually gone to a meeting yet because they only do those like twice a year. But I have sat through several fine phone calls and online conferences about what it is we do, and I still have no idea. So I represent the special consortia and other library types in OCLC. Now, when the OCLC guy came out to give me a kind of an overview of what this council was supposed to do, he was also unable to tell me what an other library is. Because if you have academics, if you have publics, if you have specials and consortias, what's left? If you're not one of those three, then you're a special library. But apparently, somehow or another, there's an other, although no one knows what that is. But I represent them. I am on the OCLC America's Regional Council for 3 years. Each of the positions is 3 years, and you can run again at the end of your 3 years if you so wish. And basically, what the position is supposed to be is more of an advisory position where you go and you sit in a meeting and OCLC gives us all this wonderful information and then we tell them what we think. So one of my questions was, well, am I supposed to be polling other consortia or special libraries and trying to find out if they have problems or what they want to see? And they're like, no, we just want your opinion based on what you know about the types of libraries you represent and what they would like to think. And apparently, there is some rather drastic changes that they are considering for the OCLC governance bit. So the way OCLC works is they have a board of directors, and this is all kind of new because it used to be a private company and then they got bought out. So, so now there's a board of directors. There is a global council, and the global council is made up of people from the 3 regional councils. So there's the Americas Council that I'm on, there's a council for Europe, and there's a council for the NEMEA region, which is like the Far East and Asia. And so there are 3 of these councils, and those 3 councils all kind of operate differently, but then feed into the global council, and then the global council people sit also on the board. So it's kind of confusing as to whose input does what and who's supposed to do what. So for the last year or so, they've been writing and rewriting and revising new rules to try and figure out how to maybe simplify this and make it a little easier and reduce one step maybe of OCLC governance. The problem is they have to get 3 different groups with 3 different ideas of what they're supposed to be doing to agree. So it's been very interesting for me to hear all of the infighting and people going, oh, this is a great idea, and then the next person go, that's a horrible idea. And so it's interesting to see that dysfunctionality works everywhere in the world, no matter what kind of organization you are. So I'll be going in November to beautiful Dublin, Ohio. Dublin sounds way nice until you say Ohio after it, and then it's not nearly so much fun. But I'll be going there in November for 3 or 4 days for a meeting on which we're supposed to vote about all of these council changes, although no one can agree to what they're supposed to be at this point, so we'll see how that goes. So anyway, if you have OCLC questions or concerns, I am your official point of contact for those. And really the only reason I got on this council was so I can go talk directly to them and tell them my grievances. And I already have an appointment set up with the VP or president or whatever of their finance and billing. Because when I was talking to him, I said, the guy I want to talk to is the one who figures out what all this should cost and what your billing member libraries. And they're like, yeah, we don't really have a good handle on that either. So we'll just set up an appointment with the guy. So yeah, it's very interesting. There's a lot of changes going on at OCLC now that they are no longer owned by an individual. And they do realize that they have issues, which is a good thing. All right, so Blue Cloud Visibility, that's the thing where you go in Google and books are supposed to magically appear in Google that will link back to RSA CAT. Well, we were, I think, the very first large consortia in there, and when we were the first and only large consortia in there, results happened pretty well. There were quite a few of them in there. You could find them. As things have been added and Google gets more and more and more and more data, there are now over 1 billion records from libraries in this large database. What we're starting to discover is that working with Google and Bing and Zafira, who is the people who are actually providing all this data so that Google and Bing can get to it, they're iterating on almost a weekly basis how the data is presented from the library world to Google. Google is iterating their search engine, trying to make sense of all this data and learn what the data is and how to use it. And the way our data is in the system, actually the way all consortia data is in the system right now, is one consortia with all of the data under it. So there's RSA and there's 4.5 million items that break out into about, what they say, it's 7 to 8 times as much data links as you have items. So, you know, lots of data under RSA. Well, as it turns out, it might be too much data under RSA, and it's overwhelming the search engines, and so things aren't specific enough to be getting results back. So I had a phone call last Friday with Zafira and Cersei Dynex, and we're going to be changing the way we present that data to Google. And this came out of conversations that Zafira had after I lit them up with Google to figure out a way to make this work better. So we're actually going to be going in and giving every library in RSA their own link, as well as RSA having a link. So if your patron does a search, they could see the RSA link, or they might see, for instance, for Elizabeth, they could see like Henry PL library.link, and the data will be presented that way. Doing it that way focuses a lot more on the location data. That's very important. Google loves location data. And so that will focus things a lot more on the libraries, and hopefully will go a long way towards helping Google better understand all this data. When we signed up for this, we were really, really bleeding edge. Like, we weren't even on the bleeding edge. We were so far in front of the bleeding edge. So now we're on the bleeding edge and we're getting cut. So now we have to repair what we're getting cut and try and fix things. So we knew this was going to take a while. And so the nice thing is that the vendors are aware of it. Google is still scared to death of libraries because we have way too much data for them. And so they are working furiously to try and get this fixed as well. So we'll be doing that over the next month or two. Again, you don't have to do anything. And hopefully in this case, I don't have to do anything either, because I complained quite loudly that I didn't want to have to do something 200 times again, because I already did it 200 times once, and that took a whole week of my time to get it done. So other people will be doing it outside of RSA. All right. And we are back to Erica.
I thought it'd be helpful, and I think Martha too is going to go over this handout during her meeting, but I wanted to make a good handout for you guys about what Blue Cloud Visibility is. I know we touched on it a little bit already, but this came out of a program we did over the summer called RSA Linked Data Fundamentals. I know some of you attended that program. Think of this as the handout that's really the condensed version of that. So I thought we'd take a look at this together. Did you want one of them? Okay, get one right now. So notice the first thing on this handout, I did put a screenshot of how, like Kendall said, this is supposed to work when it's indexing correctly and the search engines aren't, I think too many, but the search engines aren't overwhelmed with our amount of data. So ideally you should see something similar to what's on the first page. So for those online, let me show you where it's posted. So right now I need to figure out with Martha and Kendall a better place to post this handout. We were talking this morning, it's not really cataloging, it's not really circulation. So there'll probably be some kind of Blue Cloud page from our main Blue navigation menu, but for now this Blue Cloud handout is just under our meeting documents. So notice here's that result. I know it's kind of fuzzy, but we're trying to go for that result in the search screen there after you use Google, Bing, or Yahoo. A lot of this we've touched on before. Remember, it requires no extra work on your end. We do your harvests of your data on the first and the third Tuesday of each month when it was working correctly, so things were staying pretty well up to date. There's a few things though I wanted to mention, and this is more getting to the nitty-gritty of cataloging. There's some data that's in your collection that won't be visible as part of Blue Cloud, so it won't show up in those Google results. So this is one that's a work in progress. RSA Dynex said that they are addressing this, but right now that descriptive metadata that comes from Overdrive and eRead Illinois, Baker and Taylor I should say, for your ebook and your e-audiobook collections, that type of data is not currently harvestable. I think that's subject to change though as RSA Dynex moves further along. That data is different. It's not a MARC record. It's vendor provided, so it probably needs different analysis and indexing than just your MARC records that we're currently trying to harvest. As you might expect, anything cataloged on a brief record won't do well as linked data because there just isn't enough there for the links to generate. There's no subject headings, there's no controlled form of author's name. There might not, well, there probably isn't a uniform title if it's something that has been published under many versions. So brief records, like we've been trying to encourage everyone, and a lot of you in the room have done good work trying to get them cleared up. Keep that good work continuing, because again, these brief records, not only are they crummy for workflows and the RSA cap, but it also isn't helping with visibility, making those holdings available in the search engines. The last thing that won't be harvested, anything that's shadowed. This, I think, would be a good opportunity to maybe use that new reports request form that Kendall showed you at the beginning of the workshop today, that has the fields to fill in where you can specify the type of report. It might not hurt to send a report request through that form to see if you have anything that's shadowed in your collection that maybe shouldn't be. I know Rhonda keeps an eye every week on things that are being put in that are shadowed, but a lot of these things sometimes are put in, and I think a lot of times the default setting might be misconfigured. So if you think that you'd have some time to take a look at a shadowed report, I would reach out to that reports form and ask for that report. And that might be something too that Doug could help with to start getting his feet wet in the new Blue Cloud analytics. So I think, again, it never hurts to take a look at things like shadowed records, even revisiting the brief records. If you'd like Rhonda to prepare a report, she'd be glad to do that for you. So these things that you can do to try and improve your collection to make it that much more beneficial for visibility will really work to your advantage. Which is actually the next section in here. Just some tips here what you can do to really make the most of it besides the cataloging aspects that we've talked about. Once it's working, showing your users, showing your colleagues, your board trustees, your school administrators, showing them how those results appear in the search engines, and showing that we're still relevant, that we can work with the web rather than against it. I know a lot of schools, especially, we're hearing they don't need a library, you can just find everything on the web. Well, I think this is a good example of how we can work together. If any contact information for your library changes, so your hours, your website, phone number, any of that type of information, remember the library learning database is the official statewide directory for Illinois. But in addition to keeping it updated in L2 and library learning, let Kendall know, because he also fed that data into your Blue Cloud visibility account to give you that geolocation information. So if someone does a search in a search engine, they'd be able to look at their location and compare it against your library's profile to give them geographically relevant data. So if anything changes, let us know. That way we can keep it up to date for you in your Blue Cloud account. Some of this we've talked about, so remember avoiding brief records, trying to clean them up, using full OCLC records when possible that have good rich description, continuing to report to us those minimal records that have those encoding level values in the upper fixed fields of a 3, an M, or an 8. Remember, those usually indicate the description isn't as full. The more description, the better the linkages for Blue Cloud visibility. And then we talked about unshadowing too. So remember those things that might have snuck by that are shadowed from days past, or things maybe that were put in accidentally with a setting misconfigured. So shadowed reports are always helpful to look at too. The last part of this handout, I put on here some resources for recommended learning about linked data. So if you want to learn more, these webinars from Cersei Dynex that were part of a 5-part series, they were all very good. None of them I think were more than an hour. And then as the numbers suggest, the topics get more complex as you go down the list. So I think the first 2, Introduction to Linked Data and How It Works, those 2 are both very good. But for more advanced data, the 3, 4, and 3, 4, and 4, I should say. There's no 3, 4, and 5. More advanced information, I should say. Those webinars are good ones too. Cersei Dynex also has a linked data FAQs that I put up here. And then if you're a Big 13 library, I think the normal library did this, got access to the Zafira training. Our Big 13 RSA libraries, so most of you in the room, Galesburg, Illinois Prairie, Washington, Pekin, more, of course, Peoria. So there's additional training through Zafira, that company that's really spearheading with Library of Congress, this whole linked data initiative for libraries. The training is not required. It's really just up to you if you want access to it. We actually have not done it internally. I know the topics are pretty advanced in it, so we would probably pick and choose what we do internally. But for the Big 13 libraries, we do have that Zafira access, and if you'd like that, Kendall can serve as your go-between to get that set up for you. So any questions about that overview handout? Okay. Let's see. So now we're at number 6. I think we'll try and move through most of number 6, and then we'll take a break. I know you might be getting to the point where you need to use the restroom, so I promise we'll do that in a little bit. But if you can't make it, of course, you're welcome to go ahead and get up. So one thing we were noticing, and this is really picked up, it seems like in the fall here, as school got underway, we're having a lot of staff turnover at our libraries, not just our schools, but even our public libraries. I know most of you in the room are pretty stable and don't have the changes maybe that we're seeing, or maybe you do actually. But we're noticing a lot of turnover, and we're being flooded with requests for training. So we have to think long and hard about who gets training, as we have new staff joining that have no cataloging experience whatsoever and no circulation experience whatsoever. So we've decided to prioritize cataloging training for those libraries that have staff that don't know how to do it at all. There's several of them right now that are begging for a visit because materials need to be cataloged. And there's no way to do it because the person who used to do it is gone, and there was no opportunity to cross-train. So that will be the focus of doing library visits for cataloging transition and training. The transition, remember, involving the new logins, disabling the tech account, getting your overdues and your bills reassigned from tech to circ. A few of you are so close to transitioning. Elizabeth was one of them, and we finally got it flipped. Beth at Lilliam Evans, you're another one. You're so close, and so I want to reach out to you. But at this point, we need to get the ones up to speed who have new staff who don't know how to do anything. That's going to be the priority. That being said, though, we are going to have workshops here at the Rails office. And I'm going to ask Liza and Miranda to start teaching them here. That way it can free up my time to do the visits, and yet we can still offer workshops here. So those workshops will start in November for both basic and OCLC cataloging, and they'll run all the way through April. We won't do any in February, though, because that's when that Quincy migration project goes live, and that will be, I know, a nutty month. So there's not going to be anything in February. But all of them are posted on L2. So I would say take a look at the library learning calendar, and if you're interested in attending these workshops, they'll strictly be instructional. We won't go over transition details, because if we do that, it's going to take what should be a 4-hour workshop. It'll probably turn it into a 7 or an 8-hour workshop. So these workshops here will just be instructional. They won't be going over new logins or any of the details about the transition. And like I said, all of those are posted on Library Learning, and we'll send invitations too on the listserv closer to the dates. That way you know they're coming. Before we talk about what we're doing with item group editor training, do you have any questions either about the shifted focus for cataloging training or about the workshops here? Okay. A couple of you have asked about item group editor training, and I'm glad that you've asked because it got me thinking that we have to do that batch editing training in a different way. So the item group editor wizard, it's a very powerful wizard. We definitely don't want just anybody using it. Training is essential, but we're finding though that trying to do training on the item group editor isn't working well as a workshop because when we get multiple libraries, we're unable to really talk in depth about your collection and the changes you might need. And I think, Jennifer, you at Peoria Heights, you're a good example. So I think it worked well to just do that training in the context of your library versus trying to use canned examples in a workshop setting. And I'm finding that a lot of times as I do these transition visits, I'm getting requests for item group editor refresher training because the staff had attended one of those multi-library workshops and not really understood the point of it. Since they weren't working with their real collection, we were in a test server, not manipulating real data. The plan for item group editor training is to offer it on site at libraries, but again, we have to remember that the priority right now is these new libraries that have absolutely nobody who knows how to catalog. So I'm tempted to tell you for item group editor training, if it's an immediate need for a batch edit and it's something that the cataloging team can help you with, to email the help desk and we can help you with the edit. If you have recurring edits that need to be done and you really think you need that training, I can put you on a list for when hopefully this flood of new staff seems to slow down a little bit and we can start to get another foothold in doing training other than basically cataloging 101 to get them up to speed. But mostly I just wanted everybody to know that there'll never be item group editor workshops scheduled here just because that training strategy didn't seem to work well for the wizard and then the type of analysis that's needed on the collection that goes with that training. Do you have any questions about that? Okay. I wanted to mention too, let me see if I can go back to our committee page. There's a free webinar coming up. Remember we were just talking about linked data, and BibFrame is the library variety of that linked data that puts your MARC holdings visible on the web. There's a free webinar coming up that talks about that BibFrame aspect of linked data. It's on October 12th. It's free. It's an hour and a half long. I put the registration link on our meeting resources. It's basically going to give you an update about where the Library of Congress is with this project, and then they'll have also too some of the larger research and academic libraries that are participating in BibFrame getting started with it. There'll be their perspectives as part of this too. Not required for you to listen to this, but I just wanted to mention it in case you do want to learn more about BibFrame, but don't necessarily want to spend money on a webinar. This would be a good free one with information straight from the source, straight from Library of Congress.
And you said you put that link.
I put the link on the bottom of the committee page. I'm not sure if they're going to record it, so I didn't put it on the handout. If they record it, though, that might be a helpful resource to put on that handout. So if you're on the committee page, it's at the bottom. I'm going to try to closer to the 12th. I'm going to send this webinar out on the listserv because I know there's more staff than are in this room and online who might be interested. So, but there will be an invitation on the listserv too. But I wanted to mention it now since I know it fits so well with what we were talking about earlier in the context of Blue Cloud visibility. Any other questions? Okay. I wanted to mention too, we attended, Rhonda and I did, a cataloging boot camp that was done by Laconia, which is a suburban professional development group. Rhonda, would you mind coming up and just sharing some tidbits from what you learned from it? I'm going to see if I can open the flyer, maybe. Okay.
Well, I will say that the woman who presented it, Karen Snow, she was really engaging and she really has a love for cataloging. It came through and it really, I mean, I've been doing this for a while and I've gone to lots of RDA training and all of that. And she just made some things hit home more than other things. She started from like, she's like, I'm going to just take it as everybody who's in here doesn't know anything. And so that's how she worked through it, and it was just great. Other than that, I don't really have much to say.
No, that's good actually, because I think this is the type of training that would work so well as boot camp training for the Rails membership. And I did approach Karen after this, and she said she would be glad to talk more about a potential partnership with Rails, which I thought was very encouraging, knowing that she has a good quality of instruction under her belt. She's a great document writer. And I learned, too, that she has been doing this for some time for Florida. Florida has a pretty rigorous professional development program for catalogers. So Karen has been doing remote classes and also going down there periodically to meet with classes. And she said, you know, I'm wondering when Illinois was going to start something similar. So I can't say for sure.
She really made it easy.
Yeah.
I mean, she walked through everything. She's explained Ferber, she explained RDA, she explained what Mark is, and everything. I mean, it really was a boot camp.
So we're hoping something like this might be able to become available at the Rails level. The other piece of this I'll mention, there was a very good manual. It was very long though, but if you're interested in the manual, I think it was over 300 pages. But if you're interested in that manual, send a note to Rhonda at the help desk. She'll see if she can zip it and send it to you. You probably won't want to print it since it's so long, but if you'd like to see the documents from this boot camp, I think it'd be worth a look just because there were so many examples. And then also to that firm grounding in the theory behind how organization of records is changing with this new entity relationship model that they're calling Ferber. So it had a good balance of both the practical examples and then also the theory to go behind it. So like I said, if you'd like to take a look at that manual, just send a note to Rhonda at the help desk and we'll see if we can figure out a way to send it to you since it's so big. Okay, I think we're doing pretty well here. Yeah, why don't we take a break? I think we're at a good spot to take a break. So I have 10:48. Why don't we try and reconvene at 11? And then I'm going to pause the recording. So those online, try and come back here in about 10 minutes and then we'll get started again. Okay, so I've unmuted myself. Hopefully those online can hear again. So if you can hear, go ahead and type in the chat box. That way we can make sure we're in good shape. Okay. Just a couple things about the Cataloging Maintenance Center. Raise your hand either virtually or in person if you've submitted recently. Several of you have. Yeah. The turnaround time has been good. We were told earlier this year that the turnaround time was going to be miserable because the CMC staff at Champaign and also Edwardsville, they're working on a digital, I think it's a Digital Public Library of America's project. So we were warned that the turnaround wouldn't be very good. But I actually think it's been a pretty good turnaround time. I know the Pekin Library, they just had a record come through.
Back right away.
Oh, good. Oh, really?
It may be lost. I don't know.
Oh no, it sounds inconsistent. I wonder if it goes to one service center, it moves through faster than another.
Because they have gone to different places. I'm not sure.
Okay. For those online, Joanne from the Pekin Library was saying that she did just get an item back quickly from the Cataloging Maintenance Center, but there was another one too she submitted several months ago that she hasn't gotten back yet. So she's wondering if maybe it's lost or she needs to follow up. Mostly just remember that Maintenance Center is still there. They're still doing local history, genealogy, special collections, cataloging. I wanted to show you on the RSA website, if you go to the OCLC training documentation, this still is not the best place for it, but I renamed the page where we have CMC information. I named it Special Collections Cataloging. That way on this page, we can have information about the Cataloging Maintenance Center, the link to their website, and then also that printable brochure a lot of you have gotten during visits or training. So that's listed up here. Earlier in the summer, I talked to Joan Bauer, who is the head of the bibliographic services for Heartland, not just for the CMC, but also for SHARE too. She said that their preferred way for the CMC, like you've been doing, is to always contact Vince Andrzejewski. He's the contact for the Cataloging Maintenance Center. And then she said to send no more than one box at a time, and then once the box comes back, you can send the next box. It sounds like that's not consistent, though, based on how some of the submissions have been going. So I'd encourage you just to continue contacting Vince if you're thinking about sending materials, and then he can tell you what their current preference is. It seems a little bit different each time we ask here, so I'd hate to tell you the wrong thing, but checking with Vince is the best thing you can do before you send anything down there. The other piece we put on this special collections page, remember, if it's something that is so unique, maybe it's fragile, maybe it's not in good shape to go through delivery. Sometimes on a case-by-case basis, again, working with Vince, he might be able to accept scans of the item, a lot like how our cataloging team here does it. For not everything, though, will they do that. So we know there's times where you have an item that's unique and yet you don't want to send it through delivery to the Cataloging Maintenance Center. We know in those cases that the brief record is what you'll want to do. So if there's brief record access on your end, just making sure you put in a good title and an author. But if there's no brief record access on your end, that's okay. If you need to put in one of those local items, Rhonda can do that for you. Just submit a cataloging request using the form that you're used to using, and then Rhonda will see it and make the brief record for you, and then you can attach your item information to it. But try and use a CMC when you can. But like I said, I know there's things that you might not want to use it for, so we know those still need to be put in using just a brief record. Do you have any questions about the Cataloging Maintenance Center?
The item that was sent in was a copy, so they will accept a copy because it was a very fragile old pamphlet, and they took the copy. Now, he wanted information from the original also.
Okay.
I sent that in an email, but they'll take a copy of it.
Okay.
They can't use that.
And did Vince work with you on the copy? Okay, maybe Sherry. Okay. Okay. I think that's a good point, Joanne. Joanne, for those online, was saying that the CMC did work from a photocopy for a Pekin item, and then as well from additional information that Joanne just emailed to them. Always check, though, with Vince, and then maybe it sounds like he'll route you to another colleague there. It might be Sherry. I know she does a lot of the cataloging too, but never just send the photocopies thinking that they'll catalog it that way, because I think they'll probably want to know. Exactly. So if you'd like that photocopy option, reach out to Vince to let him know that that's what you were hoping to do, and then maybe he can guide you, like he did with Joanne, what to do specifically, and then refer you to a colleague. Yeah, that's good to know.
Big spider, right? They just went right under.
Oh boy, we've had a spider in the room for those online. Oh gosh. close your purse, keep everything off the floor. Oh, yeah. I always say it's because we're near the woods. We're kind of out. I don't know. I've always thought that since we're kind of near the woods, maybe we get more bugs. Spidey, yes, Spidey. Okay. Let me go back here. Okay. I wanted to talk to you too. We made some revisions to the core competencies for cataloging staff at RSA member libraries. So I put them in red in the document, so we'll take a look at it together online. And then I do have paper copies for those in the room. None of these changes are a surprise because they actually tie in to what Kendall talked about with the users group, how we have a membership levels by responsibility document now. So I know we had talked, I know this group hasn't met, but the users group talked about how only full-on lines would be doing item group editor and OCLC cataloging, so that's reflected in this document. I also put some professional development opportunities in here. So we'll take a look at just the changes, and then if there's any questions, we should have some time to talk about those. So I think, Liza, do you want to help me hand out the core competencies? It's like a phone book. There's so many of them. There's extras. Okay, so for those online, I posted the core competencies from the RSA homepage, that menu in blue, workflows, documentation, and training, and then cataloging from the next menu in blue, and then policies. Notice the second link here, the core competencies. Let's open that. Okay, so the first change you'll see is I put a table of contents in here. I felt like it was getting long enough that it'd be helpful to have it broken out by section. And then notice anything that was revised is going to be in red. Thank you. With the most recent date being September 15th. So notice this first part in red here on page 2 during the introduction, just that we're contacting each RSA library to schedule basically a transition to get new logins. I know some of you are partially transitioned, some of you are completely done. Some of you haven't started at all. So don't feel left out if you're partially transitioned or if you don't have a new login. We will get to everybody. We're just having to remember reshift our focus for training since we have quite a bit of new staff joining us who unfortunately have no idea how to even put in the item at the most basic level. Okay, I put at the beginning of the basic cataloger level section, this is page 3, just a little introduction about what this level does. I looked at this in the context of this cataloging work group for Rails, and I realized we didn't really explain what each of these levels does. So the basic level is what it suggests. It's using bibliographic records already in workflows. You're attaching to them, you're editing your items, and you're doing deletions, so no surprise there. The core competencies for this basic level, this is where we want to clarify the membership levels and who can do what. So really anybody can do this basic level. Notice I didn't put union listers here because union listers are actually going to have a different account configuration since they just do cataloging. They don't do checkouts or holds. They even have different access to wizards than what you guys have in cataloging. So union list libraries that just do the cataloging, they're not listed here. I think this is an old revision. Remember, we just asked everybody who's cataloging at the basic level that you be subscribed to the listserv. So that part's still in red. I added down here under the recommendations. Remember, these are recommended, but they're not required. I added an appendix to this document that has free professional development opportunities for cataloging. By no means is it a comprehensive list, but now that we're building this bibliography, I thought it'd be a good idea to put that as a recommendation. with the hope that maybe eventually there'll be some cataloging boot camp that could even supplement it from the Rails level. Do you have any questions about the revisions so far? Nothing too earth-shattering, I know. So it's similar with the brief record level. Again, just a short description saying what this level can do. Putting in brief records for things that would never need a full OCLC record, things like your equipment, temporary things like ephemera, remembering that they should be used sparingly because remember, there's not good description, they're not in OCLC. It doesn't help with linked data either. We've had a couple questions come up about cataloging advanced reader copies, sometimes called galleys or proofs, and then also almost the unintentional cataloging of pirated or bootleg materials. So we don't have, and this is why I put a footnote, it's up to each library, each of you to decide what you collect. Obviously, you want to consider copyright, the ethics of the item, but I know some of our libraries, especially where budgets are tight, they tend to catalog a lot of these galleys in particular, those pre-publication type of materials that they're even kind of raw in their form sometimes. They're not the final version that you would see released. So even though, like I said, you'll always want to consider copyright and ethics of materials, it's ultimately the library's decision what you put in your collection. So that being said, if those things are being cataloged, though, we don't want those on OCLC records. I'd hate to have you get a world share interlibrary loan request and the borrower thinks that they're getting a final publication and then they get something that really shouldn't even be loaned if you think about it in the larger ethics of things. So again, I don't want to say you can't catalog these, but if you're going to catalog them, we'd like them on brief records just in our database so that you're not possibly having to loan them out through OCLC. Do you have any questions about that? And we're glad to help you make the records and workflows for those type of materials that can have subject headings and rich description. Miranda and Liza can help you do that. So it wouldn't have to be just a bare bones record. It could have some description to it, but mostly we just want to keep you protected in case you get an interlibrary loan request through OCLC. There were some mentions in these competencies still about sending attachments to the help desk, so I quickly changed that to the online form. Remember, that was our old way of doing it that broke the help desk, so keep using the form. That was just last summer, all of that really broke. Again, there's clarification here under the core competencies for the brief level, so saying that you can be employed at a basic or a full library. We do want to make sure, though, and this is the next item in red, if you're getting brief record training, to make sure that you have a routine need for it. We really don't want to do training if you're just going to put in 2 pieces of equipment and then you're done. So if you're going to put in on orders, if you're going to maybe have a large collection of cake pans or die shapes to catalog, and you'd like to do it in-house, that's the type of routine use that we would do training for, not just for I need to catalog a projector, and it's a one-time thing. We talked about the subscription to the listserv, and then the only other change in the brief record level is that, remember, there's those cataloging professional development opportunities in the appendix. So it's a recommendation but not a requirement. Batch editing, again, same type of edits, page 9. It just gives a short description of what you can do. Collection level edits for item information, like home location, item type, categories, or price. This is where those membership levels by responsibility, or excuse me, functionality by membership level, I was reversing it. This is where that document comes into play. So since the RSA Board of Directors on May 5th, they approved this RSA functionality by membership level document, and I put a link here to it. As part of the restructuring of our membership levels, full onlines can do item group editor, and then existing staff at basic online libraries that were trained on item group editor before this functionality document was approved by the board in May, those existing staff can keep doing it, but if those staff leave the library, it'll be a case of the cataloging team here will help with your batch edits. And kind of like with the brief record training, we want to make sure before you get item group editor training that there's a clear need to do it. Peoria Heights is another good example because there are several changes to locations that are going to be made. So that's a good case to get the training. What we don't want is someone who just wants the training just because it's more training and not really with clear edits in mind. So we always would want to talk before doing this training to make sure that there's several different batch edits, at least 3, that we know you'd need to do on the collection so that you make sure basically it's not a waste of your time if you do the training and then don't have anything to use it on. So if we can talk before the training to make sure there's a clear need for training and discuss specific edits, even better, because that way we make sure the training is a good use of your time. The subscription again to the listserv, and then the recommendation again for professional development. We talked about this next revision in red. Remember that the item group editor won't be offered as a workshop anymore, but remember as on-site training, one-on-one. The OCLC level, last level, get excited, on page 12. So again, just a short description of what this level involves: searching WorldCat via connection, finding bibliographic records, loading them into workflows, mentioning the cataloging request form. Similar to the item group editor level, so remember this level, due to the restructuring of our membership levels from that functionality document, this is for full onlines, but we know there's existing staff at basics that are doing connection well. They'll be grandfathered in. If those existing staff leave, though, at basic online libraries, that's when it'll shift to the help desk, helping you with the cataloging in OCLC. We talked about the listserv subscription. That's the next red item. And then the last red item is the professional development. I didn't put the appendix in red. I know this is a new section, but I didn't want to turn the whole thing red down here. This is by no means comprehensive, so if you have ideas for other free online professional development that you've done for cataloging, feel free to share it with me. I know this is just a sampling of what I've seen on listservs and used myself, but again, it's not comprehensive. I do know that the links are going to break probably, so if you try and use one of these links and it's broken, send a note to us so we can fix it. But there's different sections. There's cataloging principles with the basics. There's linked data and BibFrame. There's MARC, OCLC connection, and then visibility. And then the last section should be RDA. Do you have any questions about those changes? Hopefully, like I said, it's nothing that was surprising. It just falls in the context of some of the other changes we've done with our membership levels. Okay. One last tidbit, and then I'm going to let Miranda take over. So one thing that we noticed, and this actually came out of a visit to one of our members that uses volunteers quite a bit to do cataloging, not cataloging, circulation. But the problem was at this library, the volunteer who was just supposed to be doing checkouts, he also liked to explore a lot in the cataloging module. And he discovered when he was logged in as Circ, he could still go to the Edit Items wizard, which was an oversight. I did not realize that Edit Items was still accessible from the circulation account. So that is now turned off. So when you're in the circ account, you can't edit items now.
Does that include changing the item ID? That was one thing we discovered at Clear Heights was that in the circ account, you can change the item ID still.
I think it's a separate function, isn't it? Let's take a look here. Oops. I like Fond du Lac because their code's easy. So is Peoria Heights, though. Your code isn't too bad either. Some of you have unfortunate codes. Okay, so what we turned off was here in cataloging, under call numbers and items, we turned off this edit item. So now it needs an override. So if someone needs to edit items like that, they'll need a basic cataloger account. But changing the barcode, let's go back to circulation.
We were just in a patron's account
Mm-hmm.
and looking at the items that were checked out and clicked on the item and the barcode and it gave an option to change the barcode or change the item ID.
I almost wonder, if I just go here. I don't think, can you think of someone who has something checked out that we could just see if we can, okay.
Yeah, watch it. Guess I need to check out the also for the libraries.
Oh, sorry. Okay, like that, right? I can't type and talk at the same time. Okay. So on the checkouts right here, okay, you could do the right click. I think we still want you to be able to change the item ID.
Why would that's my thing, why would somebody just in the basic login need to change the ID though?
Do you want to take it?
Okay, so at the service desk, if somebody has ripped the barcode out,
Okay.
they need to
Mm-hmm.
change it, and, you know, we are such that logging into another account at the service desk or making sure that somebody else has workflows up in their office, because we're very small.
Totally. So that's why, my thing though is they can usually walk right back from the desk to my, I mean, I'm literally 5 feet from the desk and they can bring it right to me and then I'll do it right then. So I guess, I just like what you said, you're a volunteer. I think my concern is that, you know, I have some new pages and one of them she prefers to try to figure everything out on her own as opposed to asking for help. I think my concern is just that if they're playing around with it, somebody might do something incorrectly.
Yeah, if you have pages doing search, you are bigger than I am.
Okay. So that's, I mean, that's.
If you have pages, you are bigger than I am.
I know one reason we kept it enabled was because especially sometimes initial spaces get entered in barcodes, so if the item is scanned in, it won't read it. So we left this enabled with the hope that the staff could just change the barcode, knowing too that there might not always be a supervisor there who can change it for them. So this is why it's enabled. I'm hoping too, since it's a right click, it might not be as obvious as the edit items wizard, which was right out in the open. Yeah. Is it? Okay.
And, you know, in mine, if I'm working on brochures and not on workflow stuff, I may not have pulled those up in my office, so I have a.
think, you know, talking to the circulation
Mhm. I think you need staff that have the ability to make a quick edit. Yeah. I don't think, though, you want people in edit item doing all kinds of notes and changing locations. And that was happening with this volunteer. Things were being done beyond just a barcode edit. Yeah, so I'm sorry it can't be turned off, but at least I'm hoping it's not obvious. Sure.
And a mistake somebody could make. But again,
Have you had someone actually do it?
No.
Oh, okay, good.
No, it was just, that just seemed like one of those things that would fall underneath the cataloging, you know, your specific law.
Sure.
There is, you know, like I said, there are helpers that, a lot of the wizards that are change item ID, but almost all those helpers, if you go under supervisor, the property
Oh, you can turn them off?
you can turn it off.
Okay.
So if you don't want it in a wizard, you can go in and turn it off.
And I knew right here is where I was thinking maybe you thought the page could get to it.
No, it was like in the checkout screen.
Okay.
You know, kind of doing item research.
Yeah, I didn't know was that because we don't generally right click on them.
Mm-hmm. It's a good question, and I think it works to our advantage that it's not quite as obvious as edit item. Okay. Anything else? So that, like I said, is just override protected, and if staff need to do that, we'll have them get a cataloger account. Okay. I am going to let Miranda tell you about a few things with these new accounts. I'm going to try and get my mess out of the way. All right, let me open workflows back up here. We'll see if I want to call it on the floor.
Okay, what I'm going to be talking about today is to make sure that you're not checking items out to your named cataloging login. This, when workflows, okay, there we go. So like, I'm going to search. Actually, I just saw a pop-up for Joanne, so we're going to use her again. Just because I saw, you see here, she has two results that pop up when you search for her name. One is her named cataloging login, and the other is her actual library card. So if you have people at the circ desk who have something to check out to you, if they just search, there is a chance that they could select the wrong one and check it out to your named cataloging login. And these are not set up to be used as library cards. They don't do overdues or anything the correct way that they're supposed to. So we want to make sure that things are being checked out to your actual library card and not to your named cataloging login. We have developed a report that is going to run weekly that I will get that will let me know if any items are checked out to the cataloger account. And I will then contact the library and let them know that this is happening. And if it's just been happening by accident, maybe there's a staff member that just needs to be sat down and explained the difference between the two accounts and why it's important to select the correct one. If you're checking things out to them to your named cataloging account intentionally, maybe that's where you're deciding you're checking out your items that need to be repaired. I will get you in touch with our member services department, and we can actually set up an internal card for you to use. So that you're not checking it out to the named cataloging account that's not intended to be used that way. And I can show you an example of one. Sorry to pick on this person. I have not contacted them yet because I wanted to make sure that they were still checked out to her account. So this is the basic cataloging account, but you can see that there are items checked out to it. So that is someone I will be contacting to let them know that these accounts aren't set up that way. They're not meant to be used in this.
For now, we're just looking at cataloger accounts.
Okay. Yeah, right now we're just looking at the named cataloging accounts. Maybe in the future we'll add other named accounts, but for right now, just the cataloger accounts. Are there any other questions from people online? Okay, and I do want to make it clear that if you are logged in as your named cataloging account, and say you're a library that you do everything at the front desk, you don't have to log out of that account to check things out to other people. You can still access all the circulation functions from your named login. That's not what we mean by when we say don't use your named login for checkouts. So if nobody has any more questions about this,
I just have a
yeah.
suggestion. So we create new cards, confused cards.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they try to check out materials using that card, there's a message that comes up saying this patron has too many items checked out. So that reminds us not to check out materials to them. Can you do something like that with the circ map? So that way they don't check out on
An
that
alert
card.
that pops up. It's an alert. It's an interesting idea.
So I mean,
Yeah, that
you
might be
can prevent
something to
that.
think about. Yeah, thank you. I hadn't thought of that. Because I'm hoping if it's a pop-up, that would be obvious.
Sorry.
Unless, well, unless, no, I didn't mean it that way, but unless you ignore the pop-up, which happens a lot. Yeah.
At
But-
least it reminds you.
Yeah, let me make a note of that. I don't want to say one way or the other, but I think it's something we
Something.
can consider. Thank you.
And then Liza is next. Do you need workflows?
I need our, webpage.
Okay, well then I will.
Let's see. Because I can't find anything on our webpage either. Where is the helpful hints at, Erica?
It's under cataloging, so workflows, documentation,
There it is.
and training.
Cataloging,
And then it's a cheat sheet.
cheat sheet, helpful hints. Okay. I am here to just remind you. Oh, yeah, thank you. I'll just look at this. I'm just here to remind you, most of you use the help at the help desk cataloging request form regularly. Thank you so much. You're so good. I'm just here to remind you that we do request that you only submit 10 per library per day. And that's per library, not per person. So if you have more than one person working in cataloging, make sure you coordinate and you only send in 10. I understand miscounts happen. That's fine. We're relaxed about it. But if you do have more than 10 that you need to send in, check with us first, because sometimes we're getting flooded. Fridays tend to be a flood day. And I think it's because most people save all their cataloging to the end of the week and then they send it all in on one day. So we have to be prepared on Fridays for the flood to come in. So if you do have extras to come in to send us, Friday's probably not a good day for it. Or let us know that you're sending in extras, but you don't need them back right away. We're still trying to do a 1 business day turnaround time, and we're keeping up with it as far as I can tell. So
Yeah, unless something goes wrong.
Unless something goes wrong, which has happened.
OCLC goes down.
This past Friday, OCLC went down for 2.5 hours, and Miranda wasn't here, and it was just me, so I couldn't really keep up. But again, most people don't expect things on Fridays that they send in to be done within 1 business day. Are there any questions? Great, and I'm just going to point out we are starting to do training videos. I'm not going to play the videos for you today because they're quite long and we want to save some time. But if you are at the RSA website, in this new links bar on the right-hand side, it's right here under General Links, the RSA YouTube channel. You see we have a couple of videos here. I created one that walks through all the steps for submitting a cataloging request for a book using our online form. It's a longer video. It's almost 11 minutes long because I go through every part of the form. So if you haven't submitted a cataloging request yet, or it's been a while since you've submitted a cataloging request, there's this video online that you can take a look at to sort of walk you through the steps for that. Do you want to talk about your video?
Yeah, I did the one also under basic cataloging for finding your change me placeholders. When we complete a cataloging request, we'll make a placeholder for your library, and that's where you go to fill in your item information, your call number, your item ID, your item type, blah, 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 blah. And there's a simple trick to finding all your change me's, which is basically searching change me by your library and as a call number. And it brings up the whole list of items that you've sent us. If you've just sent us 1 or 2, that's not a big deal, but sometimes libraries send us 10 at a time, and it's nice to have them all in a list like that. And my video's,
4 minutes.
4 minutes long. It's really short. So And we're going to be putting more videos up here, so check back often. And if you have ideas of things that you'd like us to go over in a short little video, like a reminder or a training kind of thing, let us know in the help desk and we can do that.
So I think what we'll do, and I knew this would happen because we had a meeting drought. So we're going to triage our agenda and hit on the most important things. So I'm going to tell you one tidbit about the cover images, and then I'm going to let Rhonda tell you about several things related to brief records, and then we'll kind of just touch on what we have time for after that. So anything, though, that we don't cover today, remember we have that in-between meeting planned for November 17th, and that meeting was intentionally scheduled to cover the overflow from today. So don't worry if we don't get to everything today, but I want to make sure that you hear from each of us about some tidbits. This question came from a member, from Courtney at the Avon Public Library, and I think there's always been some confusion about how cover images are generated in the online catalog. So what I'd like to do is take you into the Avon Library's catalog. So I'll go here to the quick links, the RSA cat links. If I go down, not too far down because I forget that we file it under Avon rather than Village of. So here's the Avon's catalog link. She was noticing in her new carousel right here, this moving display of book covers based on what's been cataloged. I think it's in the last 60 days. Several of them didn't have cover images, and the librarian there was asking what she could do to get cover images on these. So what we did, because some of these, and this one actually is a good example, maybe it'll let me open this one. Notice how this one, it looks like it's a pretty good record. It has an ISBN. It's not a brief record. It has publication information. It has a physical description. What we learned from Cersei Dynex, though, when we opened a ticket about some of these, is that our third-party vendor, Syndetics, that generates these cover images through Cersei Dynex, they have to have an official image from the publisher. They can't just take it from anywhere. So for some of these books, this one I'm surprised because it's a Scholastic, but some of them were more obscure publishers that didn't provide an official cover image to Syndetics to use in an online catalog. So a lot of these, even though it looks like there should be a cover image because there's a standard number, whether it's an ISBN, an ISSN, or a UPC, a lot of these, if there was no official version of the cover image shared with Syndetics from the publisher, they can't generate the image, which I think is crummy because a lot of these are newer titles even. And Courtney too asked if she could submit the image and we could do something to get it to show up. Unfortunately, no, since we're relying on a third party to generate these images. This one I know doesn't fit the rule of thumb, but the Cersei Dynex support specialist said that typically, again, not counting this title, but typically the older the title, the less likely it is to have the cover image. Things in the 2000s forward tend to have cover images. Things older than the 2000s, they said it's spotty with the cover images. Again, relying on the official version of that image that's shared from the publisher to Syndetics. I just wanted to point out that this is a problem that we know is there, and we're not really sure what to do about it because it seems like we're at the mercy of the publisher to provide the images that we need. I do think, though, if you notice something, especially if it's brand new and it doesn't have a cover image, and you search on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, and this actually is what the Cersei Dynex rep did for some of the titles we reported from the Avon collection. If you search those sites and you see cover images, those are publisher provided on those bookseller sites. So if you're seeing images on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, they should have an image in here. Should. But I don't want anyone here to feel like you have to police it, because I know there's too much else to do that's much more important even than just a cover image. But I wanted to be sure you understand why a lot of these don't have cover images. It's because, again, we're at the mercy of the publisher, not providing the official version of the image that Syndetics needs. It is understandable because they want to be careful about the images they're using on their end. So I know they don't want to take just anything, but I know it can lead to a really frustrating patron experience when some titles have the images and others don't. Okay, any questions about that? Okay, let's do a shift in the agenda. I'll have Rhonda tell you several things about brief records, and then we'll just see where we're at after that.
Okay. I just wanted to talk about number one. This is really a promotion of our die shape collection. I handed everyone a die shape collection handout and a list of what our die shapes currently are. If you could share that with your public services staff, because I know you guys aren't the ones who are using die shapes, but if you could send that, share that with your public services staff so that they know that we have the collection and that we are more than willing to send actual die shapes to you so that you can cut them out if you have a machine, or contact me if you need die shapes but you don't have a machine. I'm willing to work with people who want to come here and use the machine, or if they want to send paper and have me cut for them. So if you could just, let your public services staff know about it, children's, young adult, or schools in the area, if they're an RSA member, this is something we can do for them. We have on, okay. Over here, we have die cut shapes. And there's a link on our website about die cut shapes, and it has all the information there. So feel free to check it out that way or via the handout. You can search for the die shapes in RSA CAT as well as in workflows, and it's pretty simple. It's one of those videos that I'm hoping to work on for you guys. So, any questions about die shapes? All right. My next thing is I want to talk to you guys about best practices for brief records. I would like to remind everyone when creating brief records that you please use the 13-digit ISBNs when you're creating a brief record. That is what workflows needs to have to match with OCLC, especially when you're creating your title control numbers. It needs that 13-digit, not a 10-digit, because it won't overlay a 10-digit ISBN with the title control number with that 10-digit. It needs the 13-digit. If you have a 10-digit and you don't have a 13-digit, we do have a tool on the website to help you. You go to Workflows, Documentation and Training, then Cataloging, and then you go to Cataloging Tools. Down here it says ISBN, Check Digit Calculator and Converter. It's pretty easy to use. Like if you have the 10-digit, you put in the 10-digit right there, and you hit Calculate, and it'll show what the 10 or the 13-digit would look like. So you would just snag that 13-digit and use that instead of the 10-digit. If you don't use brief records that often and you don't want to have to mess with it, please feel free to send a cataloging request to the help desk, and I will create them for you. Does anyone have any questions? How about online? All right, thank you.
And the thing about those brief records, remember with those ISBNs, so I'm thinking you'll only need to worry about doing that conversion if you're doing brief records for one of those approved uses and the cataloging competencies. I'm thinking it's probably mostly for on orders, making sure you're getting the 13-digit ISBN, but remember it's not putting in books that way that have OCLC records or that we can help you get the record for. So really the brief record continues to be the last resort, but we are seeing these approved uses sometimes that are being entered incorrectly. So we wanted to touch base on that. One thing I want to be sure and talk about, this actually was discussed at the users group in August. I did a visit to the Brimfield Public Library, and they really helped us make a case at the last users group that we need to make a push to better standardize how multi-disc TV series are cataloged. So this is a subject that I know it might strike a chord with some of you. It might need some discussion, which is fine. But I just want to make sure that we have something to report to the users group in November, since the users group in August was prepared to ask our membership to catalog multi-disc TV series with one barcode whenever possible, and not to split the discs up, because it's leading to too much frustration with patrons. Raise your hand either in the room or virtually if you had a patron put a request, a hold on something, and they get disc 2 before disc 3. That tends to be happening more and more. So yeah, there's yeses there. So let me show you, there's one document I've started to compile. Rather than having separate documents with all of these best practices, I've started what's called Strategies for a Tidy Database. It's posted under, let me go back here, I went to that too fast. It's under the Guides and How-Tos for Cataloging, towards the middle under Call Number and Item Maintenance. I put tidy in the title intentionally so that if you do an asset search for tidy, it'll pull up this document. So there's more in here than just the multi-disc things. But I think, Liza, do you want to hand these out for me? I think the place to put some of these things that we're talking about is in one document, thank you, rather than all these separate documents. So there's 2 sections. It's divided into call number item records and then also bibliographic records. So this is more a bibliographic record issue rather than a call number item issue. It's actually kind of a hybrid actually between the two. But I put it, I just told you the wrong page number. I think it's on page 3 actually. Let me check my notes. Page 6, okay, way off. Okay, it looks like there's a couple comments. Okay, so let me get to the right page here. So if we go to page 6, thank you. So it is under bibliographic records. So notice here, it's the 3rd bullet point from the bottom. So again, this is what came out of the users group discussion. Prefer a single comprehensive record that describes a complete season of a TV series with the multi-disc set assigned a single item ID, rather than each disc assigned its own item ID. And then like we talked about, the practice of assigning each disc its own item ID risks placement of holds on the incorrect disc and frustration for both library staff and patrons when the wrong disc fills the hold. That being said though, I know that there's some libraries based on their loan periods and what their patrons prefer will still want to split these up. So if that's the case, if these are going to be barcoded separately still and go against the best practice of a single barcode, now we'd like to see each disc of that TV series cataloged on a separate record. So you wouldn't have separate separately barcoded discs on a record that describes the series. So I have an example here to show you to have that make more sense. How many of you right now catalog one barcode for a TV series? It depends. Okay. How many of you barcode each disc separately and attach it to the series or the TV series record? Okay.
I do this separate. If I can find the RCLC record that I have it split up and split it up into ones.
And that's a good point, Erin, because you're mentioning, good, it looks like Dunlap does one barcode. Erin, for those online from Illinois Prairie, was mentioning if she can find the separate records, you'll use those to break it up. And that's actually,
We have a short checkup.
yeah, that's right. And I know we ultimately can't overstep your loan periods, but I'd like everyone to reach out to us if you're going to barcode discs separately like that and you can't find the record in OCLC that just describes that separate disc. Submit the cataloging request because Liza and Miranda can make the record that you need if you're going to continue to split it up. Because you're right, it's hit or miss. Sometimes there's a record out there, other times there's not. But the push, though, will try and be this one barcode idea. But again, I know your loan period might not reflect that, and your director and your manager might not be willing to change it. So I feel like either it needs to have one barcode, or if it's broken up, it needs to be on a separate record. So the patron and you too clearly know when a hold is placed what you're getting. Mm-hmm.
In ours, if it reaches 5 discs in a series, we've been splitting it up. We use the complete season record. And then I have discs 1 and 2, and discs 3 through 5.
Oh, I see.
Discs, it'll be 1 through 3, and then 4 through 6.
Okay.
And we continue to do that. Just because if they get so large, right now we're taping cases, locking cases together as it is to get those 3 together or 4 together. If it's 4, we keep it all together. But
okay.
But as soon as it reaches 5, we split it up.
And then you're attaching it to the record that describes the entire TV series. And I assume you're putting the pipe Z's and the call numbers. Okay.
So when a patron wants to place
we're just having so much.
Says,
right.
In the description, discs 1 and 2 or discs 3 and 4.
Right.
Is that something we can continue to do? Or I mean, we're trying to get locking cases so that we can put more discs in one case. I know that they're looking at trying to find that, the locking cases that we're using right now.
I feel like I can't give you a yes or no answer right now.
Because I just asking because we don't do individual discs, but we can always keep them all together.
Right. And it sounds like you group them into smaller little subsets is what it sounds like. Yeah. That's a good question. I have to think about that. I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned it. Yeah, let me make a note. Elizabeth.
One of the things that somebody showed for the ones that hold more are those single spindle DVD cases that have just, instead of hubs for each one, there's a spindle and you put all 4.
Okay.
Yeah, some of my patrons are incompetent. I can't seriously cannot figure them out.
Well, or they'll end up broken.
Yeah,
I'm thinking too.
But that's been part of our splitting it up. We had cases that would hold 2 easily.
And then those 2 to 3 discs, each of those 2 to 3 discs are barcoded separately, or is it assigned one barcode? Just to make sure I understand, it's one barcode. Okay. That's almost a case of we need to decide internally if we're going to make OCLC records for those subsets. That's the question I'm thinking of that I can't answer right now, but I'm glad you brought that up because probably more members are doing it. Okay. Well, I almost feel like let's take a look at an example and then we'll call it a day. So,
Erica, we do the same thing, and we also do it with audiobooks if they have
Do you break them into smaller
We
subsets?
add call number and have two different call numbers for some of the same records.
Do you do, and you do the Pipe Z?
Yeah, because we have a few audio books for that.
Okay. This is why we've never tried to push this forward, because there's so many scenarios about how things can be split up. I don't want to say we're going to give up, but I think we need to think about these cases where you're making smaller groupings of them, how that would be addressed if we want this separate record approach. So that's something that I think needs more consideration. So you're splitting even multi-disc audiobooks.
Not very often. It doesn't happen very often. We just do.
Okay. And how many are in those groupings? Is it usually just a couple that are in those groupings? Is it usually just a couple that are in those groupings? How, when you break them up? Half and half, okay. And they're on the same record, okay. Okay, does anyone else split up their multi-disc sets in any different type of way other than whole or individual? It sounds like a lot of it depends on the title too, what you're doing with it, how many discs there are, and if you're feeling like it should circulate as one unit or not.
Well, and sometimes I don't think it's about whether it should circulate as one unit or not. It's about what do I physically have that will contain
Right. Well, and given the loan period that you have too,
That too.
knowing that it's going to check out for X days, like Aaron was saying, for 3 days, you can't have something assigned one barcode for a 3-day checkout. Okay, well this needs more thought. I don't think we can push this forward, but mostly I just wanted to let everyone know that there is definitely agreement among some libraries that we need to make a push towards a one barcode approach for multi-disc sets, but I'm not really sure what our next steps are because again, everybody's doing it differently and it works well for your patrons. I do know in more cases than not, it seems like the Pipe Z causes a headache. Because a lot of times there's a report actually that we just made in analytics that shows call numbers where the pipe was entered but not the Z, and there's a whole bunch of those. So I know a lot of times that Pipe Z does more harm than good, but maybe there needs to be another way to think about this because I'm not sure that the best approach is to have all these OCLC master records being created for 2 and 3 disc subsets of something. I don't think that that's appropriate. I feel like for a separate disc, you might be able to make that case if it's just one disc of it. But if we're making these homemade groupings into halves or 2s or 3s, I'm not sure that that's the best use of making OCLC records. So I think this needs more internal discussion and then to be revisited. And it might involve having you guys that are doing the Pipe Zs get reports to help you keep an eye on them. I'm not really sure, but I feel like if the Pipe Z is being used, we have to make sure it's being used correctly, and that's the part that a lot of times isn't being done. So why don't we go ahead and just table this? I almost wonder if there needs to be a smaller group that should meet about this. Maybe that's something that we'll talk about internally, and if we decide for a smaller group, we can try and put something together to have more discussion on it. But mostly, though, I just wanted you to know the idea is out there. And there's a lot of frustration about the holds and the wrong disc coming in for the patron. Okay, does anyone have any thoughts before we go ahead and wrap up for today? I think the items that we didn't touch on, Let's come back to them at the November 17th meeting. That'll be from 2 to 3:15, just online. And then, like I said, it's posted on L2, but you'll register on Go to Training since it's an online meeting. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for coming. We'll look forward to seeing you hopefully in January. I'm sure the weather will be much different. Probably much colder. I will hang out in the chat for a little bit, so if anybody has questions from the discussion, I know I wasn't able to respond to some of them, so if someone has any lingering questions. Otherwise, I'll go ahead and stop the recording. Thank you again for coming, and have a good rest of the afternoon.